Hello, everybody. Hi, all of my beautiful people. Hey, Janice and Millie. Hi, all my beautiful mods are here. Love you all. Love you all. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. I truly appreciate you. Y'all are some hard workers, and I want to thank you very much for being here. It is Friday, June 27th. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hello to everybody in the bushes and everybody coming in. I hope you have a wonderful day today. And I hope it's beautiful where you're at. It's a little bit sunshiny outside and a little bit cloudy on the other side. So that's what it is. That's what it is. I wanted to come on this morning and give some people some time to come in. I don't know if they want to come in or not, or I don't know who else is on or what's going on. But if it's just us, it's just us. I do want to say some prayers for Daily Tab. She is getting her chemo today. So I do want to say prayers to her. And her husband just had surgery. So let's say some prayers for Daily. And I did speak with her a minute ago, and she is getting chemo. So we do need to say prayers to her. Cancer really, really, really sucks, as we all know. It's no fun. It's no fun. And so I hope everybody's doing good this Friday, June 27th. That's right, prayers for her and her husband. Prayers for H. Davis. I don't want to say what else going on. I heard from H. Davis yesterday in my email, and H. Davis is really having a hard time. So many prayers to our friend H. Davis, and as he likes to call me, his YouTube auntie. So many prayers out to him. He's going through a lot as well. So there's that. Many prayers out to everybody that's having a hard time and struggling. It's not a fair world out there, but we will get through it somehow, one day at a time. Just know that here you are thought about a lot and you are loved, and I appreciate each and every one of you. And the struggle is real. The struggle is real. Just know you're not forgotten. I wanted to, and as people come in, you may have to rewind. I won't hold it up. I do have to go out and do some things today, and I will be on here again. But I do want to go over this case. This is an old case, but it is worthy to bring up again. It just shows, it shows that even people think the grass is greener on the other side, for one, and it's never greener on the other side. And it also shows no matter who you are, who you think you are, and how big you think you are, that you just can't get away with things. You just can't. You always have to pay the price. And I think this is something that I just wanted to bring out again. And I'm going to. So this is a case that happened years ago here in Panama City, actually Panama City Beach. I thought it was very interesting. And it was about a medical examiner and what he did to his wife and family. The family was torn apart in Panama City Beach. The community was torn apart. And it was about a story. And his wife, Kay, was 52 years old, and she was found unresponsive at home. And her husband, William A. Cybers, then was a county medical examiner, and he initially refused an autopsy, stating he was honoring Kay's wishes, and her body was embalmed before forensic investigators began, their investigations. Dr. Sabers was again a Panama City medical examiner, and he was arrested. He eventually was arrested. Yeah, that's right. That's right, Millie. Money can always buy you out of things. He was trying to save a lot of money because he had a woman on the side, and that's what I meant by the grass is not always greener on the other side. He went on to marry that lady, but we'll get to that in a minute. The Panama medical examiner was arrested for the murder of his wife, Kay, who died suddenly in 1991 after years of suspicion and legal battles. It cost him a lot. And what I mean by that is his son ended up taking his life because he couldn't live with the fact that he knew his father unalived his mother as well, let alone all the things in between. The case was this very huge and famous. I call it infamous because Sabers' role as a pathologist and how long it took to secure a conviction. It exposed flaws in this forensic justice system, in the region. Yeah, it was very sad, Janice. And today we're going to head right there, in my hometown, in my city, for this case that rocked the medical community as well. And it raised so many questions. And this case really still lingers here. It was definitely a shock. And many people, to many people, William Sabers wasn't just any doctor. He was Bay County's chief medical examiner. He was a man responsible for determining how people died. Think about that. But it was a cruel twist. It was a twist of fate. His own wife's death that turned the microscope on him. He wasn't too slick. In 1991, Kay Sabers died, and it was very it was a mystery. It was under mystery circumstances at their Panama City Beach home. They live right there on the beach in Paradise. At first, her death seemed like it was just natural. And after all, he was the chief medical examiner. Who would suspect foul play? That's what he was counting on. But friends and family, oh boy, they weren't convinced. There started to be whispers and questions asked. But it wasn't until 9 years later, in 2000, that William Sabers was indicted on first-degree murder charges. 9. See, he was accused of poisoning Kay with a lethal cocktail of drugs, including muscle relaxants and sleeping pills. That's right. So investigators claimed he abused his knowledge of medicine to carry out this perfect, undetectable crime. So this trial, man, it was a huge trial, and it captivated all the Florida Panhandle. Prosecutors argued that he killed his wife to be with this mistress. If I was her, I would have crawled under a damn rock. But a medical investigator that he worked alongside said the case wasn't airtight. There were delays. There was legal wrangling and questions about all the evidence that was preserved, some which Cyber himself may have overseen. Now that, you talk about a conflict of interest. I told you there's shady stuff going here too. I told y'all about, there was a, listen, Lindas. And anybody here knows who I'm talking about. I don't have to speak their name. Honey, there was a neurologist here who did brain surgery on his own brother. And look, he made it, but he limps. He's got problems. And they both still worked within the hospital here. And I told my husband, if I ever, and people refuse to see them here. They don't, that should be against the law. But I don't think they're practicing anymore within the last several years. Well, I say within the last 5 years anyway. But, I've worked with them at the hospital, for one. And I have been in that neurologist as a patient, and I refuse to see. But I told my husband, if me or my kids was ever in a car wreck, incapacitated, never, and I won't put out the name, but I said never, if anybody comes towards you with that name, never let them touch me. And I have called that office to make my own appointment and said, don't put that person near me. Don't ever let me have an appointment with them. And they said, I wouldn't do that to you. Well, good, because it won't happen. I'm just saying. That's unethical. Who does brain surgery on their own brother? I'm just saying. So these things do happen. It happens here, there, and everywhere. But eventually, after years of lethal chess, Cybers struck a deal. He pleaded no contest to a reduced charge of manslaughter, and he received probation, no prison time, and that deal infuriated many who believe justice was never truly served. And to this day, people in Panama City are divided with a calculated murder by a man who knew he had to hide a crime, or a tragic medical mystery wrapped in circumstantial evidence. After the plea deal, Cybers left the public eye. Now, a lot of people thought he was still alive, but he's not. He's not. That's not true. Dr. William Cybers, the former medical examiner of the 14th Jurisdictional Circuit, who was the focus of a 2001 murder trial and then a 2000 plea agreement charging him with killing his wife by lethal injection in 1991. He died of lung cancer in Central Florida, and he was 81 years old. And his death come 11 years after he reluctantly accepted a plea agreement for manslaughter in the death of Kay Cybers. A deal said he took it because of his failing health and his desire to avoid a second trial, and he maintained his innocence throughout the process, including the day he entered the plea deal in 2003. Hey, Annabella. He said he took the plea deal and said, I'm going to spend more time with my daughter. See, his son unalived himself because he couldn't live with the fact that he killed his mother. Okay. He said after sentencing later, he told the News Herald that's here, I finally realized I could lose again and there's no way I could go back to prison. Well, to jail or whatever. It was too horrible, he said. I bet it was for him. You know, always living the good life on the beach with all the money he made as a medical examiner. I bet it was too horrible for him, honey. Again, he had a son who took his own life because his son said he couldn't live with what his dad did to his mom. Kay Cyber, she was a beautiful woman. She died May 30th, 1991 in Cyber's home, and it drew suspicion when someone notified the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. They suspected foul play, and the case was investigated for years by different agencies and prosecutors before an indictment was returned in 1997, charging Cybers with first-degree murder, saying he killed his wife with an injection of an unknown poison. And between the indictment and the circumstances surrounding the death and the plea deal 6 years later, the case involved enough twists to sustain national attention. So it did get national attention. And at the time of his wife's death, prosecutors alleged and Cybers admitted to being in an affair with Judy Ray. At the time of death, Cybers and Judy Ray became husband and wife, so he married her 3 years after Kay Cybers' death. Kay Cybers' body was embalmed without an autopsy at her husband's request, something he said she did not want that she previously requested, but something the state said he did to hide evidence of poisoning. Prosecutors initially charged that Cybers used potassium as the poison, but a judge ruled that the science behind that wasn't sufficient to be used at trial. Prosecutors later switched to, I can't say that word, SUCCINYL as the poison. That evidence was allowed at trial despite defense objections. The state sought to desinister Kay Cybers' body, and Iowa gave after an indictment to obtain additional tissue samples for testing. After a week-long hearing in Iowa, see, this made it all the way to Iowa, honey. Hey, YouTuber and everybody coming in. The request was denied and a decision ultimately upheld by the Iowa Supreme Court. Kay Cybers' family supported Cybers and testified against the discernment. Kay's son Timothy committed suicide after the indictment and before the trial, and the state said he couldn't live again with his father killing his mother. In 2001, the trial was moved to Pensacola due to a pre-trial and the publicity. After 3 weeks of testimony, a jury found Cybers guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. That verdict was overturned in 2003 when an appeals court ruled the evidence surrounding the poison, was not sufficiently scientifically accepted and should not have been allowed at trial. During the trial, the governor appointed special prosecution who alleged Cybers killed his wife May 30th, 1991, so he could marry his mistress, which he did in 94. But to avoid losing at least half of his $6 million in joint assets through a divorce, that's why he killed her. They started deliberating at 1:30, and after receiving instructions from Circuit Judge Don T. Sermons, the jury deliberated less than 6 hours. Reasonable doubt argument fails, and Florida authorities sought permission to exhume Kay's body for further testing. Again, the case went before the Iowa Supreme Court, where the court ruled against exhuming her body, citing insufficient proof and strong family objections. It was a hot mess, y'all. A hot mess. What we're going to do, hey, H. Davis, honey, how are you? What I'm going to do is, let's see, hold on a minute. Okay, here we go. I want this link dropped. We're going to watch this. Fair use. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Oh, why is this so dark? Okay.
Investigative series, Gulf Coast Confidential, where we cover some of the most scandalous crimes and cases that bubble up in Northwest Florida and beyond. Joining me to talk about these what the feezy type stories that we love to discuss here on Gulf Coast Confidential is Pam Hill. She is a pharmacist and advocate for victims because she herself has experienced violent crime in her own family. So in this episode, we're talking about a case that is another one that will tap into Pam's vast pharmaceutical expertise for, and it's called Me and the M.E., Married to Death. Kind of a cool title, I think. Yeah. And M.E. being medical examiner. So this is a case that relies heavily on forensic evidence, especially since the suspected murderer was a doctor and a medical examiner, the medical examiner for the Panama City area back in 1991 when his wife died. So he was someone who was certainly familiar with the process of collecting evidence from a murder victim. And this was such a high profile case. I remember, I graduated high school in Northwest Florida in 1991, but I remember this making headlines at the time. And we're talking about the death of 52-year-old Kay Cybers. She's the wife of then Panama City area medical examiner, 58-year-old William or Bill Cybers. So whenever someone died of unexplained causes or even explained causes in and around Panama City, it was up to Bill Cybers to discover why. He was schooled not just in the practice of medicine, but also in pathology. So when his wife became sick and died, not a lot of people questioned him when he started to direct the narrative, as we like to say. So it's a fascinating case, isn't it, Pam?
It is. It is definitely. And what they said about Bill is that he was William, that he was very well respected and not many people questioned him because I think having that pathology lab too, he was curious. He wanted to know why people died. He wouldn't have been a good medical examiner if he didn't have that level of curiosity and intelligence.
Right. And I think that also, I feel like that era too was still the end of that, the large and in charge, white, respected, educated man. Like whatever you say goes. Nobody really questions you. Right. I feel like that was part of his authority too, that he carried into a room, if you will, especially in that part of the South.
Definitely. And we're dealing with people that are dealing with probably the worst thing that's ever happened in their life. Somebody in their families died or passed away or been killed or what have you.
Right. So there's no reason necessarily to suspect anything. And that's what we're going to talk about with this case. I mean, it's made national headlines. It's been the focus of numerous true crime shows and various television programs, but it's a fascinating case. So if you haven't heard a lot about it, here's a little bit of a recap. So, Bill Cybers basically said he did what he normally did when a family member was sick. So his wife got sick back in 1991. He said he drew some blood from a syringe. He said he stuck her with it several times because it was difficult for him to hit a vein. And it was the beginning of what would be a headline making case across the country. Did this medical examiner's wife die from natural causes, or was she actually murdered? And eventually, a jury determined that Kay Cybers' husband, Bill Cybers, killed her after he had been having a long time affair. And so Pam and I are going to break down how they came to that conclusion. You know, he had her body embalmed without an autopsy just immediately after she passed. And again, it reminds me a little bit of He Picked Her Poison, the story that we just did recently on Dr. Connor, who is alleged to have poisoned his own wife with gout medication. So he was in a position to do it. He was a poison expert. And here we have another man, but he is the guy that prosecutors go to say, how do we prove that such and such killed so-and-so? You did the autopsy. Here he is, as a jury said, murdered his own wife. And how did he go about hiding and covering his tracks? So why would embalming cover his tracks back in 1991?
Well, to answer your question there, it would dilute any samples that they would need to take. You would have the formalin or the embalming fluid mixed in with it. So that would be adulterated and not exactly 100%.
So inconclusive. You couldn't necessarily say what did or didn't happen.
Right. It would be wonderful for a defense. If I was a lawyer, that's what I'd use. We can talk about this all day, but it's adulterated. But let's back up a little bit and say William and Kay had gone out to eat. They'd had a perfectly lovely evening. I think she had like prime rib. He had pompano, and they popped some bottles, 2 bottles of Chardonnay. So they were feeling good. And they went home, and Kay had developed a headache. So she went to bed, and then she kind of kept saying, I have a headache. I have a headache. Because, you know, the part of this that kind of I question, why are you drawing blood from people at your house? That doesn't seem, you know, sanitary and all kind of other stuff. I just don't buy that part.
Right. And just the fact that he would try to make it sound so, oh yeah, I did it all the time. That just doesn't make any sense.
I wouldn't want somebody in my family doing that. Like
especially since he threw the syringe away in a dumpster on the way out of the house. I mean, none of that seems normal.
But he said it is normal. That's where some of the defense on this was one of the best funded defenses ever. He spent $2 million. And at some point in his defense or his appeals and stuff, he even had the brother of Alan Dershowitz, which is an O.J. Simpson lawyer. So a lot of money's getting spent here. This couple.
A lot of money to keep from giving his ex-wife money.
I know. He had $6 million. He spent $2 million on the defense. I mean, don't be greedy. Just get a divorce. Here we are again. Every case we do, I'm like, just get divorced.
See, and that's what never makes no sense. You do these stupid things and you get stupid prizes. Not only are you going to get caught, but you say you're trying to save $6 million, for example, because you don't want to give it to your wife. Because if you get a divorce, you're going to have to pay XYZ. Well, you big dummy. You do something like this, not only have you committed a damn murder, then you got a child that's took his life, so you're less a child that you're also responsible for. You've tore your family apart. You've lost your job. You ain't making no more money. The community's looking at you like you're what you are. You know, you got a bimbo who goes on and marries you, and most people ain't going to do that. They really ain't. You just lucked up, I guess. But you got yours. You still got lung cancer and suffered. I'm just talking about this one case right here. But then you still got to go meet your maker, and then you still had to go through with getting arrested, and you still had to go on to lose more money than you would have had to do if you just said, okay, bitch, here's your $6 million. What an idiot. Hey, BMW Coupe. I'm telling y'all, the grass ain't no greener on the other side. And to these damn women I got something to say to you. When you know a man is married, it ain't just the man's fault. Bitch, you're just as guilty, if not more. You know how to say no? You're the one I want to beat the fuck out of. People say, well, he knew. Well, you did. No, bitch, you knew exactly what you're doing. I'm just saying. Let's get on with it.
Already, and don't kill each other.
Right. And I'm not saying women aren't capable of having the same motive, but over and over again, we cover these cases where it's the man who wants to kill the wife because he doesn't want to part with his money.
Right. Well, see, in this case, I'm disturbed at the very beginning, if you can't tell. I'm disturbed by her having a headache, and then she wakes up and like at 2 or 3 in the morning and goes back to sleep and wakes up again at 5. And she tells him, I'm not feeling well. And according to him, he gets syringes and tries 2 times in her arm. It's probably a little different syringe than that, but
so these are ones that you keep at the pharmacy?
Yes, they're at the pharmacy, and I guess he would probably use something about like that. But I just don't think that's good to be doing at your house.
Right. And for those folks who are listening and can't see us, like on the YouTube channel, I'm basically holding a syringe that Pam has brought from the pharmacy, and it's just your typical normal little syringe. But it was 2 of these tiny puncture marks that police or the autopsy discovered on Kay's body, and he tried to explain that away as well. When she was feeling bad, I was trying to take some blood to see what the issue was, but ended up throwing the syringe away. And you had problems with that for a number of reasons, but also because what did they end up finding in her body? And they had to find it years later as technology progressed. But what is it that they think that he injected in her with those 2 spots?
Well, she had elevated levels of potassium. And when we die, our red blood cells kind of collapse and they give off potassium as well. Worry about him. And the organs and everything going through. So that's kind of hard to tell. But eventually, they got to where they had accused him of using succinylcholine, which is a paralytic that they give people before surgery. So you're not moving around, and they use that while they're intubating you. But succinylcholine can increase potassium also. So through different types of little technology is how they found that. But I'll explain that in just a minute, because I'm still disturbed by the beginning again about these puncture wounds. He could not stand that Kay was a full-figured lady. In other words, everything I've read about this case, the word fat keeps coming in.
So he found himself a new piece that didn't have as much as the old piece.
Right. I guess not as many.
To be crude, but that's how apparently he looked at it.
He did not like that. And he said that's why because he put those puncture marks in her left arm. That's where he said he drew the blood. But he said he couldn't find a vein because she was too fat, he said. And so that keeps coming up. She was a smoker. And then he said she didn't like doctors. She wouldn't ever go to the doctor. She just wouldn't go. That's his narrative. And to come to find out later, that wasn't the case at all. She married a doctor.
Right.
She might not have liked having to drive somewhere because she did get people giving her flack about being overweight. She'd go to the doctor and they're going to talk about this, that, and the other. She probably didn't.
She was aware of what the issues were.
Right.
Sure.
But she was pretty.
Right.
I think she was pretty and full figured. There are plenty of people that like full figured ladies.
Right. And she wasn't grotesquely obese. It's not like she was unable to move and walk and participate in her own life. No. It was just the normal weight that comes sometimes with folks.
Having 3 kids.
Right.
She already had 3 kids. So it was just he found somebody new. And that Judy lady. And I already don't like her already. I can't help it. I just don't.
I know, Pam. I understand. As a journalist, I certainly want to maintain my, unbiased, if you will, but just looking at her pictures, listening to her testimony, just how she reacted to all this that went on, I feel as though they're trying to hide behind this blanket of it's love.
Mhm.
We're in
Mhm.
love and love
Mhm.
justifies everything. And I'm just this woman that loved him. And I'm
Mhm.
like, you're the woman that gave him the new piece and he
Mhm.
didn't want the old
Right.
piece anymore. And he was like, I'm going to kill the old piece because I don't want to part with my millions unless it's to defend myself to keep my new piece
Exactly.
happy.
And that's where they went. That's the little loop-de-loop we went through. But with this when he's taken the blood or doesn't successfully do it, he says that he tries to get her up one more time, go to the doctor, just go to the doctor. So she wouldn't, so he goes into work. But he said that he put the syringe in their trash and then took their trash to the dumpster.
Well, he is just so efficient.
Yeah, but he said that's what they do because he out in that part of Panama City, they didn't have trash pickup, and I think somebody found out that that was true.
Mm-hmm.
So even if that was true, most healthcare people and most people know you don't throw syringes in the trash.
Well, and if you're getting into that level of detail,
Mhm.
then already
Boom,
something's
boom,
amiss. I mean,
Exactly.
and maybe that's just my
Mhm.
experience from covering so many of these murder cases. But if we're talking about when the trash comes and where a syringe was thrown
Mhm.
away, there's already way more
Right.
crazy stuff going on than probably should have been.
Yes,
you know?
exactly. And then you're a physician, you're a pathologist, you're a medical examiner, and you don't have curiosity as to why my wife doesn't feel well.
Right.
You can't take the day off and go take her yourself if she's a little bit afraid of doctors, which she wasn't. She did smoke before and she quit doing that. And I think she didn't want to go because she just didn't want to be scolded all the time.
So, at what point did Kay Cybers
There's
actually
a
die?
thing
When did
called a
people
little
realize she had
red
passed away?
box.
He left the house about 6:30 to go to work. So a few hours later, he tried to call her and he couldn't get her on the phone. Dr. Cybers couldn't get Kay on the phone.
And this is what he's telling police
Yes,
and testifying to.
It's his story and he's sticking to it. He sends his technicians to the house to check on her. So they go out there and they find her deceased. So they call him back and go, she's gone. So he tells them what to do. He tells them to get her to the funeral home. He doesn't say call the paramedics or anything. I mean, it's nothing you can do at that point. These are his technicians. They work with death all the time, so they know that. So it was just interesting that
He was circumventing the normal process.
right. He didn't go back and find her. I think he kind of set that up where he wouldn't find her because the whole premise is that, like we were talking about with the iron and the potassium and all that stuff that goes on in your body when death happens, the potassium and iron should be equal in your body, but there's other things that can make it elevated. Well, hers was elevated. So they were wondering about all this, and these technicians, they're kind of like, you're putting us in a bad situation. But they're the ones that were obedient, sent her body to the funeral home, and she was embalmed. And we talked about that before when people were there to take samples. Thank goodness somebody took some samples, and they did freeze them also. They had been kept in well conditions. So like we were talking about earlier, the formalin or the embalming fluid was a part of it. But these people are so smart these days, and these new technology and stuff, they can kind of factor in for that. But in our system with law, a reasonable doubt, if you can just get one juror to think that has embalming fluid in it. It just seems so brilliant and clumsy at the same time to me because he just didn't want her there. And then people had a lot of questions because she had those puncture marks. She had bruising. Bill had a gambling problem. He had a girlfriend, all this other stuff going on. He didn't find her. He sent somebody there. The syringe is in the dumpster type of thing. Just everything in the world happening. You leave your wife when she doesn't feel well, but yet you send somebody back. So there's a lot of questions. And in this case, there was a special prosecutor assigned to this. And I can't remember his name, but he just never stopped. He just kept on and on and on.
Well, we love that.
Yeah, we love this guy. And so he's the one that got the newer technology. And it took this whole process, I think, took about 10 years.
Yeah, it was 10 years before he went to trial in 2001 and was actually convicted. But tell me a little bit about this paralytic drug that he used. Would she have known what was going on?
She would have. Succinylcholine. Yes, that's what's so sad. She was aware. She was awake, but you're paralyzed. Your diaphragm is affected by that too. That's what they use for when we're having surgery, when they need to intubate us. We don't need to be wiggling around and stuff. while they're trying to intubate us. Not all the time, but it's a drug that they use. She couldn't cry. She couldn't ask for help. She could just, it's so sad to me. This is a part of every murder and every death that I think haunts people that are victims like me, those last moments of your loved one's life. I just think about Kay laying there and seeing that. And there she is. She basically suffocates to death.
He's sticking her twice, trying to find the vein that she was supposedly, quote unquote, too fat for him to find.
Yep. So she's just laying there. And I mean, if that was her last moments, which it was, that has to be awful.
I know, it's heartbreaking, and hats off to that prosecutor who was relentless in pursuing that case, because eventually the state of Florida was successful in convicting William Sivers. He was tried in 2001, like Pam said, 10 years after Kay's death, and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole for at least 2 years for killing her with a lethal injection. And the jury that convicted him, he was 68 at the time he was convicted of first-degree murder, recommended life in prison, I'm sorry, for a sentence, but the judge said he had little choice but to follow, which I thought was kind of interesting, because the only other sentence possible besides life in prison was death by lethal injection, what he had done to his own wife. And so it was interesting. I thought at the time Sivers declined to make a statement before sentencing, and he showed no emotion when it was actually read. But the new piece, Judy Ray, cried softly, apparently, media report at the time, second row of the audience. And I feel like I'm being, a little harsher than normal on this, but I've covered so many cases where a person has killed their spouse and almost immediately, move someone else in or openly flaunts this. And I just find it hard to believe that love covers all sins, that these women didn't know. And even if they didn't know, you have to suspect, you certainly know that other people suspect it, and I just have a hard time with that.
Right.
I really do. I feel like you're just as guilty.
Right.
I don't think you get to cry softly and feel bad. Who are you feeling bad for? Certainly not the lady who's dead.
Well, and certainly, why would you want to marry the man that just got convicted of killing his first wife? I mean, all these people, these little sayings people have, they're like, if they'll do it with you, they'll do it to you.
Right.
That kind of thing. And I mean, like, what kind of prize is that? What's ironic with this too, is that Kay's family was supportive of Bill. They didn't think that he killed her. They thought she just died of natural causes.
Right. Because she had to be, uninterred, if you will. They had to dig her up.
Well, they were going to, but they couldn't, because in the state that she was buried in, the family, if they contest it, you can't dig them up. That's why those samples with the embalming fluid, even as, for lack of a better word, adulterated as they were, gave some sort of indication, because they used ratios and extrapolated and all that kind of stuff. And they had kept those samples frozen, which is rare for a 10-year thing. And then also, through all this, he loses his youngest son, because his youngest son and daughter were the ones that found Kay.
And these were the children by his marriage with Kay. They were Kay's children.
I think his name was Tim. And he had trouble with all this. He just stayed so conflicted and so hurt. I don't think people realize how much it tears your heart out when somebody in your family's murdered, especially by someone you know. I can relate to this. My sister was murdered by her own child. His mother was murdered by his dad. He said, I can't live on this earth knowing that my dad killed my mother. So he took his own life.
I know. That just breaks my heart. Death seemed to follow this man.
It's
literally
unbelievable. You living in this, after knowing that, the funk that you live in for many, many years. I'm an outgoing person. I love to go outside. I love to keep it moving. My grandmother said I sit on G looking for O. I'm ready to go all the time. But during this time, I had to make myself go out of the house. It literally took me 15 or 20 steps to get out of the house. I'm talking about, like, I'll start and get ready. Then I'll sit down and go, no, I can't go out. I mean, stuff that's not like me.
Right.
Or I'd get near the door and then I'd get sick, and then I'd just go, hyperventilate. And then I'd go sit back down again. And then I would go get something to drink. I mean, it was like a piece of cellophane or plastic was over my door. I just couldn't get out it. And then just going to get mail. I mean, I have a stack of mail that's probably about 30 or 40 letters high. When I was grieving immediately, I just threw it all on the table. I put a rubber band around it. 10 years later, I still have not opened it. Because you know what? When I go to do grief seminars, I put that on the table and go, this is what grief looks like.
I know. It's just this things that used to be easy and normal before just seem insurmountable. And it's just like you're living in a packed cotton.
Right.
Everything's
Right.
slow and distant and hard to move through.
And nothing matters. I
Yes.
mean, my sister Trisha used to always say anything that came up in our family. She said everything's work outable, and she said nobody's dead, so we could figure it out, But when Sharon died, she said this is not figure outable.
Right. And for those who aren't familiar, Pam's sister, Sharon Adelot, was killed by her son, Brandon Adelot. If you'd like to learn more about it, we have several episodes on that. 2 of them are Mommy Killer 1 and 2, also Secrets, the Confessions in the Fieldhouse, and Murder and Madness. But if you'd like to hear more about this case, and it's an ongoing one with Sharon Adelot, and certainly that's why Pam can relate so much to the grief that Tim Cybers must have felt watching all of this unfold. But, going to the fact that Bill Cybers was the medical examiner for Panama City, he did work closely with law enforcement and the legal system. And I think it's interesting. And I do wonder if he didn't know the circuit judge that sentenced him. Circuit Judge Don Simmons, basically, when he gave out the sentence, he told Cybers, good luck to you.
Okay.
And I thought, well, what?
Yeah.
Good luck to you.
Right.
Sorry you got convicted for killing your wife.
Yeah.
Better luck next time.
Right. Well, a la shades of Ted Bundy. Didn't that judge tell him, take care of yourself, young man? I've enjoyed watching you pretend like you're a lawyer.
Right. It's almost like man to man. Sorry, dude. You really just went awry.
You just got caught, bro.
Yeah, I know. I felt that was kind of sad as well. I just thought that was interesting. It's not it. If that had been my mother or loved one and the judge had said, good luck to you, to the man that you just sentenced, I mean, that's just completely unacceptable. And I get that you may know someone. I get that you may have worked with them in law enforcement, but it just gives the appearance of being completely biased
or just out of touch. What luck do you need? You've chosen terrible things. You have terrible luck. I don't necessarily believe in luck. I believe in blessings and things like that and choices. But I mean, that offends a family when the lawyers are in court and they're talking through the case of your loved one and they're talking loud and being a distraction. That is disrespectful. I cannot tell you the things I never knew about before that now as a victim sitting there still 10 years later will be in there and they're talking about maybe releasing my nephew and some lawyers over there yucking it up or wondering who's next on the docket. Very disrespectful.
I know, like you said, completely out of touch. Well, it's interesting because, it was a jury in Pensacola that ended up convicting Cybers. They moved it from Panama City to Pensacola because they felt like it was a change of venue. He would get a fair trial because it wasn't as well known over in this part of the woods back in the day in 2001. But that verdict was actually overturned in 2003 when an appeals court ruled that the evidence surrounding what's the drug that he used?
The succinylcholine.
Yeah. So that's the one. They found that it was not scientifically accepted and should not have been allowed at trial. But at any rate, he ended up taking a plea agreement before it went back to trial because the prosecutor was trying to figure out, how we're going to be able to take this back to trial. But he ended up taking a plea agreement and he was actually, but it didn't require him to serve any more time behind bars.
Right.
So he died of lung cancer in Central Florida. He was 81 years old and he was just so grateful that he got to be with his new wife and his daughter at these last times. And I thought to myself, well, your dead wife sure would have enjoyed being with her family.
Yeah, she would have. And what also, I read his obituary that was written, and you would have thought that he was a choir boy or altar boy or whatever, because it was very flowery. And I'm sure that he did some wonderful things and, he could have been a good person, this, that, and the other. And there are people, I just want to make this clear, there are people that think that he is not guilty.
Yeah, because he basically pleaded to manslaughter. Right.
And I basically think he is.
I think he's guilty as well. I say hats off to that prosecutor for not giving up because here's a man who put himself above the law.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't stop.
Right. He was like, what my penis wants is more important than my wife's life. I mean, that's what it comes across to me. And I hate to be so crude. Maybe I truly am cynical, but I have just covered so many cases and that's what it boils down to. Like what I want is more important than you living and breathing. I don't care how it impacts my kids. I don't care how it impacts her life. I care how it impacts my penis and how it impacts my bank account.
Well,
period.
There you go.
Right. And now he's dead from lung cancer. And I'm not crying softly.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
It's a different thing. I mean, if his own son felt so conflicted that he took his own life, I mean, that really, to me, if someone's in that way of thinking or the ideations or whatever, they aren't in their right mind, but it's because of so much trauma or grief or not being connected or something. It's just sad all the way around. So it is hard for us to say, oh, pop some bottles now, having a good time. I just don't understand any of this. If you're not happy with someone, get out.
Leave.
Yeah.
I know, but it becomes about the money.
It does come
and
about
they're
the
in
money.
the way.
Yeah, it is about the money. But really, I mean, what is it? It's just money. He's had to spend a third of it with the Dershowitz family.
But yeah, it's just this arrogant, entitled feeling of, well, I've earned this. Why should
Mhm.
she get it? I've got a new piece. I don't want to
Mhm.
spare, I don't want to part with it. And I
Mhm.
don't care that she's the mother of my children. I don't care that she has supported me and stood by me. It's like she just doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Again, it's just about what he wanted. And those were my takeaways
Mhm.
from this, is that essentially this was another case of a selfish man who wanted what he wanted, and he essentially had enabling help from somebody who was benefiting from
Mhm.
it. He and his new wife traveled. He denied guilt even when he made that plea, and essentially, like what you're saying, I read that obituary as well, and it was just her kissing his booty, like,
Mhm.
oh, he's just this great guy. Well, sure, he made your life
Mhm.
better, but he killed another woman
Yeah.
for you to have this
Right.
life. Enjoy it,
Right.
sleep well, smile for your little social media
Mhm.
post, but I see you.
Yeah, I get it. But what's still tangled in my mind is how Kay's family has bought into that too.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go along with this Pensacola jury that convicted him.
Yeah, we're gonna go with it.
Yeah, exactly. And as far as where he is now, good luck to you.
Mhm.
Whatever you found on the other side. But yeah. Anyway, what are your takeaways?
My takeaway is that I don't think people need to be doing blood tests at home. I don't think it'd just be sort of like doing surgery on your family. We've talked about this before. Don't practice on your family.
Oh,
If your wife needs blood drawn, take her to the doctor. And that was not true. She didn't. That doctor fear and stuff is just something he made up.
Sure.
It's all so diabolical to me. If you separate it and don't put it out together, no, it's innocuous. They're like, so what? She didn't like the doctor. Well, she didn't like the doctor. She's fat. I mean, all that he just kept saying over and over and over and over every
Showing
time.
his heart.
Yeah, everything I've read, she was fat.
Yeah. And I guess that's why she had to die, according
I
to him.
guess. But I just, my takeaway is go to someone else outside of your family.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Pam, thank you so much. And
you're welcome.
Thank you for joining us for Me and the ME Married to Death. And thank you for joining us for this episode of Gulf Coast Confidential. I'm your host.
Yes. So y'all go sub up to that station. That's the first time I saw them. I was trying to look up some information on this as far as the news channels and stuff. But yeah, oh my God. What in the heck? So this was a big story back then. And I was going to bring it the other day, and I thought, I didn't yet. But so Millie, that's what I was wondering. I don't see any information if she passed away or not, but he died at an older age. She's probably a little bit younger than him. I don't know, but I can't find any information if she's passed away or not. What I'm seeing is she kept a pretty low profile after that, and she did not get married as far as I can find out after that. What I'm thinking is she's probably living off of his. She probably didn't get married. If you get married again, you can't collect nobody's your husband's Social Security, which would probably be higher than hers. So she probably did not remarry again because of that reason, or his pension, or something to that effect. Yeah, she's probably spending what money he had in his retirement and all that kind of sort of thing. Not sure what money he had left after he paid all his fees and stuff since he got caught. But, she was probably living high on the hog, that's for sure. Holly said, I went to all 12 years of school with Lonnie Turner, allegedly unallied to his parents who owned a funeral home and got away with it. We're friends on Facebook, and he is still very mixed up dude. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's wrong with people. I'm telling you, just get a divorce, people. Just get a divorce. Just get gone. There's no reason for this. You know, he just thought he would get away with it. And it's still likely that Judy is still alive, probably, because and she's still probably around Clearwater Beach somewhere. And there's the daughter from him and Kay is probably Jennifer. She's probably somewhere just laying low. I don't know if she's married or got a different name or whatever. But she was only last mentioned in 1991. You know, that's all the information I could really find on her. So who knows? I don't know with 100% certainty if she's still around Panama City area or if she's, but that's neither here nor there with her. It's really not. She had to go through hell too, but I just know that the brother couldn't live with any of it. He knew. He knew, And when Kay died on May 30th, 1991, she reportedly experienced, her chest and arm pain early in the morning. And supposedly, William attempted unsuccessfully to draw her blood and then left for work, allegedly. And then she was found about 10 in the morning, unresponsive. They said she was dead for about 30 to 180 minutes. Despite medical examiner William initially ordering no autopsy, claiming it was per Kay's wishes, and he arranged for the embalming, delaying crucial forensic investigations. It's just all BS. I am glad that they caught everything, and caught him. I just think this case illustrates how delayed forensic advances and legal technologies, all this are so entwined, or intertwined, whatever you want to call it. What started out with suspicious death with no autopsy ended with a full murder conviction, then manslaughter plea, but no real punishment beyond that couple of years was served, and it's a crying shame. And I think this stuff needs to be brought out. I think people need to be reminded. And no, these people are right that we just saw on here. People don't need to be, oh, yeah, Holly, yep. And people need to be reminded, you don't need to work on your family members. You don't. It's conflict. People need to stay out. The best you can do, like I was saying with the doctors here, the neurosurgeons and all that, the best you need to do is, if you're in a hospital or something like that, and it's a family member and you both work there or something, or a patient comes in and it's your family member, is stand outside the door or the window. I don't believe that you need to be anywhere near. I'm just saying. a lot of confusion, a lot of upset. You just don't need to be there. So I wanted to bring that to you. And I don't know. There'll be more stories, more different things. And I hope that y'all enjoyed it. I know a lot of people don't believe this stuff goes on, but it does. And people need to be reminded of it. So thank you for joining me here today. And I'll see y'all again this afternoon or later. Yeah, the egos get the best of some doctors. And Millie, you know that better than anything. You know that better than anything. But y'all, if you don't mind, please hit that thumbs up. And I thank you for being here. And I got to go out and about again today. And I will see y'all in a little bit later. And as you notice, I always have Sebastian's information up here. And I do want to say, if you know anything about missing Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers, he is still missing. So please continue to share his information. And if you know anything, please say something. You can call 1-800-TBI-FIND. And it's time to please say something. Thank you, Selena. Thank you, everybody coming in. And y'all have a great day. And I'll see y'all in a bit. Bye.